Hello and welcome back to a video essay on my channel. I have a lot of Let's Plays on my channel and I talk about a lot of my video gaming opinions, but honestly, I don't really dedicate a whole video to talking about my opinions on games or some of my theories or some of my experiences with games. And I thought it would be really fun to start a series just around my thoughts and opinions on certain series that I've played, maybe offer a different perspective, especially because I didn't start playing video games until I was an adult. I feel like I'm experiencing so many of these games for the first time, and then I do end up thinking a lot about them as the months kind of pass by after I've finished them. And I thought it would just be cool to start putting some of these opinions out here, and maybe you'll find it entertaining, maybe you'll enjoy a different perspective, or maybe you have a different perspective than me and you can let me know in the comments. Today we're going to be talking about the series that is freshest in my mind, which is Bayonetta. If you have not seen my Bayonetta series, I have played through all three games. I'll link to them somewhere up here. Especially having just finished Bayonetta 3, I had a lot of thoughts around, honestly, how the Bayonetta series has lost my trust. Now, I started out absolutely loving the Bayonetta series, and to be clear, I still do really love the characters of Bayonetta. There's a ton of stuff about Bayonetta that I still really enjoy, but I want to take you through in this video my journey of Bayonetta and how I think that the Bayonetta writers started with something really strong and have ended up in Bayonetta 3 with a very weak plot line, how they've lost a lot of the things that many people enjoyed and a lot of the things that made the series so successful, how they've lost that, and where I'm interested to see the Bayonetta series go in the future, and maybe how they can rectify it a little bit. If you're interested and excited to hear about my opinions on the Bayonetta series and why I've personally just kind of lost trust in it, you can go ahead and click the like button down here. And if you are interested in more videos like this, making sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell. There will be lots of video essays like this coming. I've got about 25 different ideas already written down, so there's gonna be a lot of content coming for sure. Also, if you're looking for some community interaction and want to chat more about game theories, etc., we do have a Discord. The link is in the description below. And you can also visit me while I play games live over on my Twitch, www.twitch.tv/KTCOLE19. All right, you're not here for the introduction, you're here for the goods, so let's get into it. Also, just a personal disclaimer, I am not a video game historian. I do not know every single detail about every single Bayonetta game. I do not claim to know every single detail about every single Bayonetta game. This is in no way a reflection of like years worth of research into one video. These are just my opinions. If you disagree with them, that is totally cool. And if you agree with them, awesome. But these are just my personal opinions. I am not trying to speak for the entirety of the video gaming community in any regard. So just to put that out there, this is just me sharing my personal thoughts and opinions on the series. Bayonetta is extremely popular in my opinion because of how well it does camp. So in my opinion, its success is due a lot to the high camp, extreme raunchiness, completely out of this world actions and lines and battle styles. However, it also has a storyline that makes you go, okay, this isn't just a video game about. And that is very much Bayonetta 1. Bayonetta 1 is campy, it's ridiculous, it's fun, it's fast, it's rated R, but it still has a pretty decent storyline that ties everything together. There's a clear beginning, middle, and end. You get all of your plot questions answered by the end of the game, for the most part, in my opinion. I felt like at the end of the game, I understood what had happened, I understood who the characters were, and for me, everything seemed to be tied up in a pretty nice, decent bow, which doesn't always happen for most games. Most games, like, you kind of have a few questions, and for sure, like, there were questions that I had about the world, and there were questions I had about, okay, well, what does Bayonetta do now? And, there's definitely interest as to what's going to happen next, but I wasn't left wondering about a bunch of plot holes or wondering how things got accomplished. It was pretty straightforward to me, which I appreciated. Now, Bayonetta 2, I was shocked at how much I enjoyed Bayonetta 2. So they gave us tons of stuff, in my opinion, that we loved from Bayonetta 1, but they also gave us additional gameplay improvements, or like things that honestly like made it even more fun, in my opinion, which those were things like fixes to the combat. So I remember on Bayonetta 1, normal mode felt like extremely hard mode. And that is not just a me thing. I have seen many other people say that Bayonetta 1 on normal is kind of equivalent to playing on hard mode. So a lot of people, including myself, popped it down to easy for Bayonetta 1. And typically, just to give you a range, I play every game on normal mode. I'm not somebody that like goes in and is like, I want the super hard mode, but I typically never really have to pop things down to easy. And in Bayonetta 1, I definitely did. And I'm very glad that I did, because it allowed me to play the story and do some fun combat and still also be challenged for sure. But in Bayonetta 2, I could play on normal mode and there were tons of challenges, but they felt extremely doable to me. They honestly also shortened it up a little bit. I actually don't know if the runtime in Bayonetta 2 is definitely shorter than Bayonetta 1, but it felt shorter, and I didn't have a problem with that. I actually thought that was cool. I also felt like the Muspelheim challenges were a little bit more accessible. Again, there was not any Muspelheim challenge. I did every single one of them in the game. There was not one of them that I thought, this is truly like far above, you know, like your average gamer's level of difficulty. There were ones that took me tons of tries, but I was able to still do them in the end, which I really enjoyed. And you know, it was like, okay, cool, I can do all these extra things in Bayonetta 2. And then finally, they gave us a new story, but it ties pretty directly to Bayonetta 1, in my opinion. And again, by the end of Bayonetta 2, I was very clear on who the big bad was, what the story was. Every plot question of mine was tied up, and I was very satisfied with the ending. At the ending, I thought, I understand the plot, again, beginning, middle, and end, and I wasn't confused about anything. There was nothing that left me being like, that felt really out of character. It was all the same characters that we loved and that we knew, but they were just built upon. So, you know, Bayonetta has a new hairstyle, and Bayonetta and Jean's dynamic is different in this one, you know, like they know each other. Now they remember each other. They know each other. They're married, you know, and, you know, Luca is back, and Luca's fun and kind of fulfills the same purpose that he does in Bayonetta 1, but it's fun because you're like, oh, that's my dude Luca, like he's back, he's fun. And with the introduction of Loki, again, you start out really not knowing anything about him, but you have the same exact information that Bayonetta does, which you don't know anything about him. And then by the end of the game, again, you are very familiar with who he is and why he's there and why this battle is even taking place. So I thoroughly enjoyed Bayonetta 2. And I typically am not somebody that thinks that sequels are really ever needed. Typically, it's just like a cash grab, which, you know, I can recognize and say like, okay, you know, I can still appreciate the fun aspects of it. But typically, I'm not somebody that is a fan of sequels. But this one I thought was really enjoyable and was a really nice follow-up to Bayonetta 1, because it still continued to give us the super high camp and the total raunchiness and everything that we'd come to love and expect from Bayonetta. And then they just gave us a fun new story to play with that was easy to understand and that they explained in full at the end. Now let's get to Bayonetta 3. This is where it kind of all came crashing down for me personally. Bayonetta 3 starts off strong, introduces us to some new characters, which hell yeah, we had that experience in 2, loved it. It was really fun. Viola is introduced. She's a bit one note at the beginning, but Bayonetta characters sometimes are a little bit one note, and we still appreciate that and enjoy it. And we kind of have the understanding that we'll likely get a lot more information about her as it goes on, and we'll come to kind of know her and understand her, and, you know, maybe go on an adventure with her, and, you know, that will all kind of settle in. We're given the setup for the story, which is a big setup. And so we're all kind of ready and raring to go and wanting to save the world and save all the different multiverses. And, you know, you're excited about the prospect of all these different Bayonettas out there. And it's fun. And it's kind of like, you know, when you're beginning Bayonetta 2 and you're like, all right, like we've got the cast of characters that we know and we love, and we're going to see them in a different scenario this time, which is going to be cool because we may be able to see more of their character and glean more from their character, the more different scenarios that they're in. And we've got the added fun of we've got some new people too. The gameplay is also really fun, in my opinion. They introduce a lot of fun mechanics. You get, obviously, of course, all the different weapons. You get the Demon Slave technique, which is very cool and really OP, to be honest, depending on who you're using. So the gameplay is very fun. I will say, for me personally, the Muspelheim challenges, there were tons in Bayonetta 3 that I just couldn't do, and no amount of hours that I spent trying to get better at them would really yield me any results. And obviously that's just me. With practice, a lot of people can get through them. Just for me, it wasn't happening. So that's just my own personal sad part about that, but I wish that I could have gotten through all of the Muspelheim challenges like I did in Bayonetta 2. So the reason why, for me personally, Bayonetta 3 was the tipping point for me to say, wow, I'm really bummed. I'm really disappointed. And quite frankly, I don't trust them to do well with another Bayonetta game. I don't trust another Bayonetta game to really ever be as good as 1 and 2, and I don't know if I'm particularly interested in going through a whole game where I just end up in disappointment. And the big things that did it for me in 3 were as follows. To start off, the big bad of the game, Singularity. Obviously, at the beginning of a game, you're not supposed to know anything about a villain. And honestly, as the game goes on, you don't really need to glean a whole lot of information, but the precedent that was set in Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2 was that by the end of the game, you understand who the big bad is, and you get the backstory, and your questions are answered about why the big bad is out to get you, is out to get Bayonetta, is out to get Jean, is out to get the world. You understand that, and you're given that information by the writers at the end of the game. Now, in Bayonetta 3, for Singularity / Dr. Sigurd, we don't get any of that. I've been told that you can find descriptions and text, supplemental text that fills in those lore gaps in item descriptions within the game. However, in my personal opinion, if you want to storytell through items and things that you pick up in the game, personally, I think there should be a precedent for that. And Bayonetta had set the precedent in games 1 and 2 that you are getting told a story. There are plenty of games with really cool storytelling techniques or with different storytelling techniques where, you understand that you do have to read through every single thing and, glean every single bit of information. But for me personally, I was looking for, at least some type of explanation within a cutscene, or even a little bit of an explanation within a cutscene, but we never get that. By the end of the game, I have zero idea why Dr. Sigurd / Singularity wants to destroy the world. I have no idea. If I missed that, if he did say that at some point in the game, please let me know. I will feel slightly embarrassed, but at least I'll know that it was just me missing it. But I don't think that he at any point really says, this is why I want to destroy the world. This is why I want to kill Bayonetta. This is why I want to rip apart all the multiverses. We just don't get that information. And I think when you have the precedent of Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2, who had pretty decently strong villains, in my opinion, not the greatest villains of all time, but it's Bayonetta, it's fun, and the villains were strong enough that you were okay, I want to beat this guy, or I want to restore peace to the world, and I want to make sure that this guy doesn't take over the world. You had enough of a feeling to kind of want to fight them, but there's no feeling like that for Singularity. The second thing that caused my disappointment and sadness in Bayonetta 3 was Viola. Now, I'm really bummed to say this because I know that there are plenty of people who just hate Viola on probably pure basis, and Viola's not really a character that maybe they would ever be interested in. But for me, I was so looking forward to really like getting to know Viola. It was a really fun precedent. I was like, okay, this is so cool. This like young witch. We don't know where she comes from. You know, we don't know how she knows Bayonetta and Jean. I'm excited to see how she knows them. Like, how did she get trained? You know, like how did she first meet them? Much like we kind of get a little bit of a backstory as to how Bayonetta and Jean know each other in Bayonetta 1. However, the information that we have about Viola is the same at the end of the game as it is at the beginning of the game, give or take a few key points. She stays the same. We don't learn anything about her. And quite frankly, we don't really get enough of her personality or extra tidbits about her in the chapters that we play as her. I want to contrast this to Loki, who in Bayonetta 2, we obviously, you know, start off knowing nothing about, which is totally fine. Like, that we have as much information as Bayonetta. And, you know, in Bayonetta 3, this version of Bayonetta doesn't know who Viola is. So naturally, we're not going to have as much information about her. However, in Bayonetta 2, by the end of the game, you know who Loki is. You know his backstory, and we understand him. We have a pretty good understanding of his character. We have as much of an understanding of his character as we do Luca, as we do Rodin, as we do Jean and Bayonetta. Obviously, Jean and Bayonetta we've got more information on, but you know, the sentiment remains the same. Whereas Viola, at the end of the game, I have no idea who she is aside from Bayonetta's daughter. That's it. I don't know anything else. Now, I will say, if the writers were setting it up so that way we can have a future game covering Viola's backstory, or a future game in where Viola is the protagonist and we end up learning more about her, then, you know, of course, obviously, you know, we want to delve more into that. But I still really firmly believe that we should at least get a little bit more information about a brand new character by the end of the game. Like, there should be certainly more things that we understand about her than not. I don't have to know every single detail. That's okay. You know, if you want to set up future games for that, that's fine. But I felt that that was a huge missing piece in Bayonetta 3, because at the end of the game, I don't care about rooting for Viola because I don't know her. And if we're going with the theory of we want to set up future Viola games, you want your audience to be invested in your character. I'll hold this against Jean and Luca, where Jean and Luca, I mean, Jean we have a little bit more information about than Luca, I would say, but I would say that we, you know, kind of have roughly the same amount of information about Jean and Luca. Now, Jean and Luca, I would 100% be super invested in playing a game as either of them. I would have a blast. I would love it. But that is because over the course of Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2, I have been given enough information, not their whole life story, but I have been given enough information that I feel as though I am invested in their journey. I'm invested in making sure they stay alive, and I want to play as them. I want to see more of their stories. And that is because I have been given a little bit more information along the way. And I think that's really what was lacking for Viola for me. And then the third thing that really ended up just making me lose my faith in Bayonetta and the writing in Bayonetta and the future of the series was the Bayonetta and Luca at the very end. This is not like a shipping discourse. That is not at all what I'm about to go into. Because even though Bayonetta and Luca is not like a ship that I'm particularly interested in or really like care about at all, especially with the multiverse theory, that doesn't mean that, you know, I can't get behind, okay, if there's a million multiverses, there's a universe in which Bayonetta and Luca get together. Okay, it might not be my taste, but you know, hey, you've just established that there's a boatload of multiverses. There's like a billion or however many they say they are. There's tons and tons of them. So, okay, all right, I'll accept it. Like I can kind of say that I believe that that is a scenario that could happen in one of them. I do think though that the only thing that they didn't really sell on that, even with the acceptance of like there's one universe in which they're together, is that in every single other multiverse that we explore within Bayonetta 3, it's always Bayonetta and Jean, and Luca is never there. So that was like, I kind of wish that they had maybe, if they wanted to go with the Bayonetta and Luca, you know, that they had maybe sold it a little bit more that, you know, in a universe, maybe Jean's not there, or maybe Jean is off somewhere with somebody else and, it's Bayonetta and Luca. I kind of wish that they had done it that way. The reason that I don't like the Bayonetta and Luca is, again, because it's not really being sold. Even when they're saying really nice things to each other, frankly, it kind of feels forced. Whereas if you compare this to Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2, actually, I think it's more Bayonetta 2, Bayonetta and Jean's interactions in Bayonetta 2. That feels, even though it is campy and, maybe a little bit ridiculous and totally over the top and what have you, those interactions feel really real and feel really rooted in something. Whereas the Bayonetta and Luca interactions that we see in 3 feel very stiff, extremely forced, and they're just really not doing a great job of selling it. Now, I don't think this is a voice actor problem. I genuinely think this is a writing problem. When we're seeing all these other multiverses and it's always Bayonetta and Jean, if they had sprinkled more of the Bayonetta and Luca's throughout that, especially because at the end of the game, they say, we always find each other at the wrong time. I think that's the line, or they say something similar. It would have been really nice to kind of see some visual representation of that, or to see those examples throughout the game, because otherwise it just kind of feels like somebody's throwing spaghetti at a wall and saying, yeah, they're together, but we're not gonna give any rhyme or reason as to why, and we're really not gonna spend any time selling you on it. I know a lot of people have said, and I believe that this is true, but I don't know if it's confirmed canon, that the Bayonetta that we play as in Bayonetta 3 is Cereza from the first game, the Cereza that we kind of help as Bayonetta in the game. Let's run with that this is Cereza from the first game. So again, we have Cereza from the first game and Luca, and they've fallen in love and they've ended up together, and they don't really even give any flashbacks as to how did Cereza from 1 and, this version of Luca, how did they meet? How did they meet? Because sure, Cereza met Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 1 Luca, but how did she meet Bayonetta 3 Luca? I wish they would have given us some flashbacks, or, at least a few scenes to just kind of let us know what their history is, because throughout the game, to be quite frank, Bayonetta seems extremely disinterested in whatever is happening with Luca, and she kind of just
says to Viola, well, go and make sure that he's not killing himself, which is the attitude that we've kind of come to understand from Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2. Bayonetta's just kind of Luca, make sure that you're not getting into trouble, and she's always of course going to save him, but we're not given any indication or any other setup for a romantic basis, and we don't really see Bayonetta being that invested in it either. So by the end of the game, you're kind of sitting there, or at least I was sitting there waiting for the explanation of how did Bayonetta and Luca end up together? Because all of a sudden you're at the end of the game, they're like, oh, you're my, everything, I love you, you're the person for me, we always find each other at the wrong time, and you're kind of like, whoa, what? Where was the precedent? What do you mean? What do you mean that you always find each other at the wrong time? And again, you're left waiting for an explanation that they never really give. A fourth extra bonus thing that really kind of made me really disappointed in the game itself and kind of in the direction that Bayonetta is going was the fight Viola versus Dark Bayonetta. I kind of felt like I was watching Riverdale and Dark Betty was just, back, and, look, I love Dark Betty. I love early seasons of Riverdale, but this wasn't really doing it for me. Viola kind of having to fight Dark Bayonetta is a little bit last nail in the coffin for me. And again, it comes back to, we don't have any reason to care about Viola, even if she is Bayonetta and Luca's daughter. Again, we don't know how that happened. We don't know, why, if she's their daughter, why don't they recognize her in this universe? That was another point that I forgot to say earlier that now I'm remembering. And she does say that she comes from another universe to reach them. So maybe they're, obviously this is a different Bayonetta and Luca, but then my question is, I wish we kind of saw whatever universe Viola came from. I wish we got to see her Bayonetta and Luca, Ultimately, we're having this fight against Dark Bayonetta. It's Viola's last trial, and we just don't know anything about Viola, so I'm not invested in the fight, and I don't particularly care. Why do I want her to win? Why do I want her to overcome this? Is it because we want to save Bayonetta's soul, which in that case, you know, okay, like, sure, I'm invested in that, but they don't really ever give an explanation for that. Overall, the previous Bayonettas, Bayonetta 1 and 2, it's kind of pure vibes. Like, you know that you'll get an explanation at the end of the game. You know that everything will be tied up by the end of the game, and you are along for the ride having an awesome time. You're given information, there's kind of some subtle growth of the characters happening, even if they embody tropes. Whereas Bayonetta 3 really gave none of that for me. I was vibing, I was having fun, but then the last 2 hours are kind of, you know, 160 miles per hour, and you're getting information that simply does not have a closing loop. Now, ambiguous endings can be really great, but they're typically successful, in my opinion, when one aspect is ambiguous and most of the rest of things are tied up. And Bayonetta 3 just has too many ambiguous points. It leaves you with too many questions. Like, if Bayonetta and Luca are together in this universe, why does she never mention that? Why does she not kind of show more emotion towards him? Contrast this to in Bayonetta 2, Bayonetta was literally ripping through hell to save Jean. And in 3, she has a child with Luca, and she's kind of just, you know, moving at whatever pace suits her at the moment. What is Viola's backstory? How did she become a witch? What was her life like growing up? She's seemingly from another universe, but she's also insisting that this universe's Bayonetta is her mom and calling her mom. I don't know if she was just, you know, saying that, you know, because obviously you're a different version of my mom, maybe that was what was happening, which is totally fine then. I don't have a problem with that. But if she's from another universe and saying that this universe's Bayonetta is her actual mom, then why do neither of them remember each other? If I'm wrong about that, please let me know, but that was kind of how I interpreted it. So in conclusion, Bayonetta is a really fun series, but for me, after the writing pitfalls of Bayonetta 3 and all of these elements that I just felt were really poorly handled, I will for sure be waiting until many, many, many reviews are out before buying any future Bayonetta game. I could fully also have an awesome time with another Bayonetta game. I'm not saying that I'll never play another one, but I just don't think I'm gonna like pre-order one for $60 or $70 without reading about like how it kind of goes and if people are generally pleased with it, if it builds on, you know, the pitfalls of Bayonetta 3 and all that goodness. And having said that, I'm intrigued as to where they take the series because I do think that it is a really fun idea to have, you know, the same world, but, you know, another protagonist. So to have Viola and to kind of explore her backstory, I think would be really fun. And I think I would for sure be a little bit more invested in Viola if I had gotten just a tiny bit more information about her, or if all of my other questions had been answered in Bayonetta 3 and the only thing that I wasn't sure of was Viola and really who she was. Then I would be left with, oh, I'm itching to know more about her. All of these other things have already been tied up. Cool, I'm ready. Let's explore as Viola in the next game and, you know, like, let's learn more about her and go on adventures with her. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts on the Bayonetta series are. Did 3 really do it for you? Did you have some of the same questions that I did? Did you think that 3 was amazing? I welcome all opinions and I would really love to hear, even if you disagree with me, you know, how that experience was for you and why it was a fun, awesome experience for you. I would love to hear about it. And if you also felt the same way as I did, let me know. Sometimes I feel kind of crazy and like I'm the only person thinking this. So if I'm not, definitely let me know in the comments below. But I hope that you have enjoyed kind of my deep dive into my take on Bayonetta, and I will see you again for another video. Bye.